Good afternoon, and a very warm welcome to all of you who've come back to the second day of the hashtag Balkans Summit. And those of you who are our first timers, a very warm welcome to you. As I said, this is our second day of our annual Balkans Summit, which is usually in person, but obviously for COVID reasons, we've gone online, as we have with all our other events. It's a real great pleasure to welcome you to the second day. But before I say anything about how we're going to engage and what the issues are, let me show you a little recap of what happened yesterday.
Western Balkan countries do not need only to be the members of the common European Union market, but to be part of the EU political institutions as well. Shortly, why is that needed? Many of the regional countries, if not all of them, I can speak for sure 100% about North Macedonia, we do lack a democratic experience. Why? Because some of us has never been in democracy prior to the fall of communism. So we do need democratic values to be firmly embedded in our institutions and even more in the minds of our people, our citizens. And economic development can go only in parallel to the democratic development, not alone.
General Affairs Council last week, and the German presidency organized it together with the countries of the Western Balkans. They were included because there were two topics on the agenda. First of all, the learnings out of the COVID-19 crisis, and secondly, the conference on the future of Europe. And whoever knows me, I'm always described in the meantime as impatient and demanding, knows that I'm advocating really strongly for a quick start of the conference on the future of Europe, and at the same time I'm advocating for encompassing the countries of the Western Balkans already now.
The region has one good chance. It's called Common Regional Market. On that, we have the possibility not only to integrate better, but to bring forward the process and push the process of regional cooperation. That is going to be the most important thing.
Retaining the focus on the European integration of the Western Balkan countries is and remains and will remain one of the main priorities of the Bulgarian foreign policy. We very much believe that a credible accession perspective continues to be the key driver for transformation.
There you go. That gives you a highlight, but I have to say, it doesn't convey the heat, the passion, the sense of commitment, disappointment, the stakes being so high that were discussed yesterday. It was completely set off, and the tone was created by the president of North Macedonia, who very skillfully and passionately explained that enough's enough in terms of the ongoing delay, and when do we call, when we actually call this and be honest with each other about accession, but also what the region means and what it should mean in the future, regardless of the accession process, but actually a vital part and combination of what Europe should stand for in the future. Today we turn our attention to the issues of a green transition. What is the Green Deal that the EU has pulled together mean for the Balkans? What is it for the Balkans in terms of a green transition? What are the stakes? What are the issues? What are the priorities? And how do we get there in a way that's just, fair and equitable? Before I introduce our speakers, I want to say some words about the rules of the game. Those of you who are on Zoom, you should know, have your camera on, your name on your image, and stay muted. If you wish to ask a question, pose a query, or just be frustrated and express that, go to the icon which says participants, where you'll find your virtual hand, and use that. But regardless, stay muted until you're invited to join the conversation through your question or query. I also want to warmly invite our live stream audience. You are not disincluded, you are warmly included in this, and if you wish to raise a point or a question, please do use the hashtag Balkans Summit, and I will try and take as many of you as I can in the next hour that I have with you. So without a further ado, I'd like to say a few words about what this second instalment hopes to engage and develop further in terms of the issues that yesterday we had regionalization, democracy and stability, and how do you create the democratic infrastructure, if you like, but also what the accession process is about. Today, this is about how do we ensure sustainability, a just and a green transition, and what are the implications between what the EU is investing in, what is expected, but also what is happening in the territory, in the region itself. I also want to remind all of you that as a result of our partnership with UNICEF, we have quite a significant youth cohort that's participating, who I'll be calling on to engage with us. Yesterday, we had a character, if I can call you that, with all respect, Alicia, who stole the show in terms of really igniting a very different kind of sense of discussion yesterday. And I know you're here with us today. A warm welcome to you again, but I would also hope that other members of the youth delegation are here. Without further ado, I want to invite Charlotte Ruhr to the discussion. Charlotte, very warm welcome to you.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to join you all today. I want to say how great our partnership is with Friends of Europe.
Indeed.
And I'm really excited about the topic, the green agenda for the Western Balkans.
Charlotte, thank you. We're very pleased to have you. And as you know, and you will know that we're trying to get to the heart of the issue. In a lot of our discussion, this is not about an expert and then everyone listens and posts back. I want the whole brain here in this Zoom room to participate and engage with you. You're an investor. You're a very significant investment opportunity bank, a part of the financial infrastructure, if you like, of the region. Can you say a little bit about how are you operating? What are the issues for you in terms of potential economic development and sustainability in providing a just transition in the Balkans region? Because, we know how COVID has both increased the depth and breadth of inequality, and basically, like the disease, it's expounded, or affected underlying diseases or underlying issues in the way it has with society. The underlying issues for us have been inequality, but it's only deepened them. What are you planning to do?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to just provide a little bit of context. Yes. The Western Balkans are a region of strategic importance to the EBRD, and in both the past 5-year period and the coming 5 years will receive special attention in the bank. Specifically, we've grown our business to nearly double the level of 2016. It's now 1.3 billion euros from 2019 and possibly more this year. But of greater significance is how our business has evolved. And I'm very pleased to say it's very much aligned with the region's aspiration for EU membership and with the new green agenda for the Western Balkans. So what we are doing specifically on the green agenda, as you know, decarbonization of the energy sector is one of the top priorities. The Western Balkans has the worst air pollution in Europe, and decarbonizing the energy sector is one of the fastest ways to improve air quality and quality of life in cities in particular for the people who live there. We've provided policy advice to governments of Serbia, Montenegro, Albania, and Kosovo to help them introduce renewable energy. We financed 2 big wind farms in Serbia, 1 in Montenegro, 2 in Kosovo that actually, when they are completed, will account for 10% of the country's electricity use. And in Albania, we worked on the solar sector, and they got the best price globally ever for solar power when they concluded the tender following our advice. So we're working on advice, and then we come with the financing, and we're really excited about the role renewable energy can play. Moving on, though, because the energy sector isn't the only area, well, I should say, renewables aren't the only part of the energy sector. We, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, we worked with ArcelorMittal to put in a new district heating plant that also fuels Zenica steel. And this was a deal done together with the city's support as well, but really innovative engagement of the private sector to deliver cleaner heat for the city. And we have invested in the Trans-Adriatic pipeline that brings the gas from Azerbaijan to Greece and then Albania, and are working on projects to make gas the transition fuel in the region away from coal. We realize that gas is still a fossil fuel, but it burns much cleaner than coal, and countries will need a balancing fuel. And so we see gas as the solution, and we'll be working on the interconnectors to bring the gas both from TAP, but also from the LNG in Croatia that is being built across to the southern part of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Moving on, decarbonization also means cleaning the air in the cities with the urban transport. And we have a fantastic program called Green Cities, where we have more cities in the Western Balkans than in any other region. I'll recite them here in a minute. But through that program, we're working on urban transport solutions that will reduce traffic and improve air quality in the cities. Of course, the green agenda is about more than decarbonization, and our work in the cities is also about other aspects of the environment, including clean water, solid waste, work to improve the natural environment. We have our first nature-based solution project to build an orbital forest around the city of Tirana. It's still at an early stage, but we're really excited about this. This was something the mayor really embraced, and I think it's going to put Albania really in the forefront in many ways on this. And then, of course, the green agenda also includes energy efficiency in public buildings. We have projects in many of the countries, many of the capital cities and smaller cities even, and a hospital, for example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Then we will be working more on recycling in the circular economy. We invested in the company Rex in Kosovo. It's the first plastic recycling company in the country, but there's huge scope. And this is an economical business, but it needs investment, and it needs also change of attitude and proper policies. So we'll be working on this across the region as well. And then, of course, the last item on the green, one of the last that we can really address ourselves on the green agenda is sustainable food and sustainable livelihoods in the rural areas. And we're working, I'd like to just mention again, Albania. Sorry, this isn't the Albania show. It's just that we're doing a lot in the country. The government asked us to work with them on improving access to finance and advice to the farmers to help them. And that has been a bit slow to get going, but now it's working very well with several financial institutions. And then we have just launched a program together with the European Union and the Albanian Development Fund to develop sustainable tourism. So those are some of the things we're doing across the region. I have good examples from all countries. I'm very happy to take questions later.
Charlotte, thank you. Thank you very much for that. So that was very expansive, but also covered a number of the issues. And we're going to hear from Ornella from Albania in a moment about tourism, etc., and sustainability. Very briefly, Charlotte, you haven't touched upon, and this is, I think, one of the things I'm hoping that people in the audience will think about is that how important is governance or the rule of law as an infrastructure point for you to make these initiatives successful? And what about the brain drain of young people? I mean, how do you address what you've set out and make sure that it continues to be an attractive proposition for young people with aspirations who always look further west than stay within the East, if you like? But not for you to come back directly, because I want to move on. But I'd like people to engage with those questions that I've posed. And I want to remind you all, use the chat function on Zoom. It's excellent. And I can assure you, if you have questions or issues, our speakers will always tend to respond. They're committed to doing that. And also, you should post on there any issues or questions that you have. And I'd really encourage you, put your virtual hand up also, so you can raise questions that I can take in a moment. I want to swiftly move on to Albania. We've spoken a lot about Albania. You have, and Ornella, a very warm welcome to you. You need to come off mute. Unmute yourself. Lovely. We still can't hear you. Perhaps your earphones. Yeah, unplug your earphones, perhaps. Right, speak now.
Are you good?
I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm really sorry. Online.
Don't. Hey, listen. Don't worry at all. We have to. You know, we're getting better and better at understanding and anticipating, but also absorbing the technical glitches that take place. That's reality of life. Don't worry about it. Good to have you with us, Ornella. Albania has been referred to a lot this morning, this afternoon by Charlotte, but also it's a country not known again, and some issues that I've raised before about the rule of law. It's not seen as an attractive tourist destination. You might change that notion in your contribution just now, but it could be. And it could be part of its economic success. Hopefully it doesn't become like the Tirana and other places don't become the places for stag and hen nights and ruin the culture of a local place. Hopefully you'll do it in a sustainable way. But I want to hear from you that how do you ensure, given you're Deputy Minister for Tourism in Albania, from your perspective, how do you make sure you come out of this that builds the tourism context and infrastructure, but in a sustainable way for the economy? Tough question, I know.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to respond to this. So we are, I think, the single country having the tourism and environment in the same ministry, and it's unusual, all this. But everything, it's about economy. Even environment, it's about economy now. Because, for example, we from the last research of the World Bank, we know already that 1.9 trillion it's the global GDP for 2019, and from this 1.9, 1.3 is coming for nature assets. So in Albania, in the 2019, we have 21% of our economy, of our GDP is from tourism, and 90% is from agriculture only. So we are all based in environmental assets in our nature for developing our country, because at least everything is about economy. In Balkans, we are small countries, but with big problems, infrastructure problems, economic problems, with small budgets. But we have a big opportunity. We are sharing almost 1/3 of flora and fauna of all Europe, all Balkan countries together. And we have almost the same environmental problems. So for this, it's very important that even in our countries, environment has no borders. For example, we are sharing the same protected areas. We are sharing the same rivers. So our big, let's say, contribution to the regional contribution to the nature and environment is to share the same objectives, because we are sharing the same problems in the end. And for this, we can share the same expertise, and we can it's the moment now for all Balkan countries for stopping buying the expertise, to create our own expertise about climate change, and increasing our local capacities for climate change. For example, in Albania, we don't have a single bachelor or master degree for climate change. I know even in North Macedonia is the same. Even in Montenegro is the same. So we have to increase our own capacities for this. It's our obligation to increase our own capacities in this. In Balkans, We don't want to invent the wheel again, for sure, but we need to find the best way, the proper street where we should move along together with common ambitions as Balkan countries. I belong to the academia and I became later a politician. And for the last 3 years, I am in this position. I strongly believe that the science and the new innovations are crucial for securing economic growth that will be climate resilient and natural. We have to make efforts of integrating sciences into the policy decision processes and when it comes to the economic development. So we have to avoid uncoordinated policies, both on national and regional level. For example, we 4 countries, we are sharing the river and we are making different policies for the same river. And this is unusual. We can't work like this for the same environmental problems that we are sharing. So we can stabilize our economy if we make new and use already existing opportunities in EU within the Balkan region. Balkan Green Deal can be a platform for securing such coordination that ensure cooperation among Balkan countries and EU member states. Balkan countries need to be supported in integration of their economies with the EU international market and its systems. In doing so, there must be put in place appropriate policies, actions, and legal frameworks. What will be necessary legal changes to support implementation of the Green Deal on Balkan level? Shall there will be only national legal changes, or we can work all together for regional ones? So there are some issues that we have to consider, all our Balkan countries together. We have a very good street for creating our own Balkan environmental issues, and it's the EU street. So we have the EU legislation for transposing in our countries, but how to transpose this legislation in the best way that we can implement this legislation for having new environmental policies in our countries. So I would like to say again that the climate and environmental crisis is still very much upon us, and we have to ensure strong political commitments by national governments in taking measures to make improvements, but not only on national, but as well as at regional level. For this, I have a sentence, if I can.
Yes, go on.
Okay, so in Taiwan, we have to contribute to transforming the regional context in partnership with others to reshape economic and socio-economic system by building the evidence base for social, environment, and economic costs and benefits of investments, country co-allocation to demonstrate the viability of key innovation scales, policy dialogues to accelerate innovation, and a renewed effort to influence public and private investment flows. Thank you.
Ornella, thank you so much. And my tone is very much about the fact that we were getting there yesterday in terms of self-empowerment and self-organization of the region of and by itself, for itself, not simply led by a rule book that it's trying to access and that's trying to call the shots. But what I love about what you just said is that we can do this, but we need to invest in our own higher education and get a grip. We have these natural assets, but we need to work together, because if we did, wow, your economic development could be quite a significant growth point, and actually you wouldn't be knocking on the door of the EU. They'd come to you in certain ways, which is not about competition, it's about being strong and confident in your own region. And Charlotte, I want to come back to you in a moment, not right now, but I want you to think about what you've just heard and what role EBRD and others can play from the EU side, but also as investment, because what we heard is something about investment in the soft power of the region, but also some of the soft infrastructure. Ornella, very briefly, it's great that today we're having a conversation about Balkans. It happened yesterday. The majority of the speakers are women. Okay, we know that's not the case in terms of power in the region. Are you finding other politicians, other ministers of state in the other Balkan states who are prepared to have this conversation with you? Can you give an example? Are they singing from the same hymn sheet or a similar hymn sheet to what you've just set out?
So we worked last April. We was all together in Tirana for signing a joint roadmap to climate for accelerating climate budgets, climate funds. For example, for green climate funds. So we was four ministers in Tirana signing all this roadmap. So we are all together in this. We share these problems together, and we can work together. The only way, because we are a small country,
Yes.
we have to accelerate these funds. So in this way, we have small budgets for environment. And we all know the ministers of environment, they are the smallest budgets of all the government.
Indeed.
In the end.
Indeed.
So in this case, we have to work together for maximizing our objectives, for maximizing our budgets together, using even the agencies like EBRD.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's good to know, because from the outside in, it looks as if the leadership of the Balkan countries is not in the same place that you're describing. You know, when you hear about presidents and prime ministers, that you don't feel that the rule of law is being maintained. It's all about governance, and there's a kind of sense of falling apart rather than coming together. It's so good, and that's why summits like these are important, that we actually get beneath the skin and actually bring characters like yourself who are saying, you know, we are collaborating, we are doing this, but, you know, we need a different approach to us. And one of the things that occurs to me is, and perhaps Charlotte, and sorry, this is placing a lot on your shoulders, Charlotte, but others will know, and you might have an answer to this, but you know, put it on the Zoom chat. I'm interested in why the notion of green bonds isn't being developed in the Balkan region. It seems like in terms of your natural assets and the propensity to actually invest so heavily in a green agenda could be your pathway to economic recovery and post-COVID. Green bonds might be, you know, and social impact bonds would be the thing to do. But let's come back to you in a moment. Thank you, Ornella, and I'll bring you back later.
But I have to say another thing. Environment has no nationality. Environment has no borders. Environment has no language. So we have to share our objectives of the environment, because it's the only way to bring us together as Western Balkan countries.
Ornella, thank you. It's a very important point. I'm glad I brought you in, because you're right. It's borderless and without language. It's both a global, regional and a local manifestation, which actually we all need to work together to develop a response to it. This doesn't actually, it's not partial in that way. So I want to bring in one of our young voices, Marina Navarro. Marina?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can. A very warm welcome to you. Please do introduce yourself.
Thank you. Yeah, so my name is Marina Navarro, and I'm representing the European Student Think Tank, which is a youth-led international organization, and we're trying to engage the youth in the European politics, but we have not only representatives in EU countries, but also in the 5 continents. And we try to engage through the exchange of ideas, creating events, and also giving the floor for publishing articles and publishing critical views on different policies. And I really want to thank the opportunity for having us here, but also want to stress the importance of some of the points. One point that was lastly mentioned, and is that the climate change has no borders, and we actually have, this is one of the topics where we, the youth, are more engaged in, and one of our main priorities. And I had some questions, because we've seen that also COVID has increased the inequalities, as has been also mentioned in the chat. And I wanted to address to speakers, how is the policy taking into consideration that the green agenda has to be inclusive and that we're not leaving anyone behind? I know that it has been mentioned, access to finance for farmers, for example, but how do we ensure that also the civil society is included in the decision making, and that it makes a more equal and inclusive society?
Maria, when people ask questions like that, and you'll know this from our experience, I'm sure, is that you have a bit of the answer. What would you like to see happen? And I will come back to the speakers, don't worry, but what would you like to see happen? Tell us.
Well, I think bottom-up solutions are always a very good approach, in the sense of hearing what the civil society thinks, that they will need to improve their quality in the sense of equality, and seeing what are the main problems that the people might be facing in terms of greening and decarbonize and all the processes.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will ask our speakers to respond to you, don't worry. I also have Vanya. Vanya Inanova?
Yes, I'm here.
Good afternoon.
Yes.
Warm welcome to you.
Yes, tell me.
No, tell me. Please introduce yourself and say what your question or issue is.
Okay, I have two different questions, but one comment. You all are right that green in
Please
digital...
do introduce yourself, though, Vanya, just for the benefit of all of us.
Okay. Sorry, I'm economist working in the European Commission at the Joint Research Center in the International Relations and Department. Scientific support to the macro-regional strategies, including the Danube region.
Thank you.
And also helping to the Western Balkans and the Eastern Partnership. So my question is one, yes, of course, we have to have integrated systems for green, like one of the transport system. Is without missing links, and also my question is towards the key, this kind of transport communities going to the Western Balkans without missing links. Who is going to address this? I think it's internal regional systems, transport systems, but who is going to pay this kind? Because train and let's say alternative modes in the cities are very important, but who is going to take the charge of this and to put it in place? Because Western Balkan have to be integrated in the whole European transport system, in the trans-European networks, transport and energy, and integrated in the pricing system.
Indeed.
That's my question.
Okay, Vanya, I'll pose that question. Yesterday we heard from Majlinda from the Regional Cooperation Council that, during the COVID crisis, it was amazing how borders were opened up so that you could get essential gear and products from, the other side of the region into Europe, using the region as a gateway. And actually, there's something about how do you invest in those essentials, but where do you get the money from? Perhaps that's a question not only for the EU, but also how you use smart finance. And that was referring to the private sector investment of bonds, but something to think about. Thank you very much for your question. I also now have Ella Ionescu. If you could put your video on. Generation equality is your tag there, but Ella, I need you to put your, there you go. What an intro. Excellent. Now you need to unmute yourself. Okay, I may have to move on because I can't hear you. We can't hear you, Ella. Okay, I tell you what, you find the button or find the capacity to feel you can hear you, and I'll bring you back in later, I promise, okay? I'm going to move to Ina Uteveska, one of our young people from our UNICEF cohort.
Yes, hello everyone, I hope you can hear me.
I can. Introduce yourself, please.
Yes, my name is Ina Uteveska, and I'm from North Macedonia, founder of youth woman-led organization Collective Z, currently working on creation of a Green Deal on national and regional level by collective visioning with citizens from all communities, including marginalized and rural communities. And I'm very honored to be part of this summit as youth delegate. I want to emphasize that we're a generation that has the biggest mission in front of all of us, being concerned for our existence endangered by a climate crisis. We may be able to witness it more or some less, depending on many aspects, such as our geographical or class status, but this is the burden that older generations have put to younger ones, and we have no choice but to act upon it. Being aware that the climate clock is ticking and each day we're deeper into the climate crisis, is a Green Deal framework coming only from institutions going to solve these issues? The Green Agenda is a very ambitious plan for Europe as continent and needs to bring only good and justice for all, not only European citizens, and therefore it should be made together with people from all diverse communities. We all want to live in clean places with no pollution, to be healthy, to have healthy food and planet. But policies and actions that the institutions have taken till now to bring decent life for all can be judged only by the situation where we live now. And this is why we need intersectional approach for cooperating between institutions, ministries, and different communities, taking into account all of their background. So I'm very passionate about including all citizens' visions in policy creation. And that's why I want to ask the panelists today, as part of high important decision makers when it comes to these issues, how do you believe for the people cooperation to become reality? And do you, and if yes, how, do you include the on-ground people demands in creating policies that will impact all of them, all of us? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You packed in a lot there with a lot of passion, and thank you for that. If I can pose the question back to you, and this is something that, Alicia and others that were participating yesterday, I said, what is it you want? So all that you said is absolutely right, and others wouldn't disagree with you. In very specific terms, you're in this audience, there are, over 100 people here and countless others watching. What do you want from politicians on the agenda that you're passionate about? One specific thing. What's your one ask?
Yes, I want definitely cooperation together with people that are on the ground facing the climate crisis and the health crisis today more than ever. And cooperation will bring better informed policy making and decisions that are right and just for all citizens. Okay. Yes, so people cooperation above all.
People cooperation agenda, thank you. Yesterday we wanted a platform for youth, interregional conversation and a voice, and this is lovely, the people cooperation agenda. I think there's a theme that we'll be concluding, I hope, that comes tomorrow, and something that we need to build on as we work further with partners in the Balkan region, but also the EU. I want to go to Jana. Jana Rapensek, or Repansek, if I get that right. Jana.
Yes, exactly. Jana Repansek. Actually, it is. I'm the director of the Center of Excellence in Finance based in Ljubljana, Slovenia.
Excellent. Well, welcome to you.
Yeah, thank you. We are an international organization serving Southeast Europe. Mm-hmm. Our members are ministries of finance and central banks of Southeast Europe, so EU pre-accession countries. Mm-hmm. And we are currently implementing a project called Fiscal Implications of Structural Reforms. Okay. But what I would like to comment is actually what Ornella said about internal capacities of institutions mm-hmm. in the region. This topic is so important. It's to actually understand what capacities institutions in the region have and to capture this capacity in order to share it among themselves. Mm-hmm. Because there is no more powerful or nothing more powerful than understanding what knowledge you have and believe in what you can actually contribute. So I invite actually with the question, do institutions in the region understand what knowledge they have and do they manage this knowledge in a planned way? Meaning, do they have in their institutions people that are looking at talents of these institutions? Who are those that can contribute to the policy making? This means that the person in institution would actually focus on people working for this institution, surfacing their knowledge in order to share their knowledge within the institution and with other institutions.
Jana, excellent. Don't go away, because you've made a brilliant point, really. And there's something about, and this doesn't apply to the Balkans, I think it's a malaise, or if we call it a bit of a disease across governments about policy making, in that they believe the brain sits within the organization, the government, and doesn't actually see that the brain is around it, i.e. in the communities, institutions, elsewhere, in problem solving and having a sense of co-production of the solution. But from the people that are actually impacted, the point that Elna was making just now is that how do you ensure that policy making has a number of vantage points from the citizen, from the organized community, communities of interest, but also the talents within organizations which are not necessarily at the top end, but in the middle end of an organization. Jana, before I ask you, before you go, what can you offer? So I'll come back to Charlotte on this. As an organization that does what you do, you're in a brilliant position to pull together talent, aren't you, in the region, to be able to build capacity? What can you offer? Or is that too bold a question on my part?
No, it's not, because this is actually our focus. We would like to understand more what we can offer, and we do. We are basically a platform for learning and knowledge exchange. And you mentioned that the knowledge exists also outside the institutions, right? In countries of the region. And you are perfectly correct that it does. But you see, in order for these institutions to also grasp this knowledge that exists, they first need to understand their own capacity, their own knowledge. And I'm talking here like ministries of finance, line ministries that are policy-making institutions, right?
Absolutely.
So in order for them to support the broader community, they need to first understand what's their knowledge and be confident, believe in their capacity.
Indeed,
And,
but there's a thread here, Jana. You've heard from Ornella, who said that, 4 ministers came together, they've signed a deal, and they need further support. We have the EBRD and we have you. I can see a project in the making here of development, and let's hope that, that builds a bottom-up, a government and civil society-led approach, and we look forward to having that conversation next year. Let's see. This is on public record, and hopefully those of you respond to us, but let's see. I want to move on to one of our other contributors before I bring others in. Is Besian. Besian, you've been very, very patient. You're Kosovo Minister for Agriculture, Forestry and Rural Development. We've heard from Ornella about a very different mindset that's required, and the fact that you sit on significant green assets and green opportunities. Share with us what you're thinking about what you're doing and what needs to happen if you're going to move in a situation which is just, but also about recovery and not simply about making do. Besian, thank you very much for joining us.
No, thank you for the invitation and the opportunity. First of all, it's great to see all of us in the region and beyond cooperating in these dire times. In fact, despite these dire times. Thanks, I think, are in order for all of my counterparts and the international institutions that support us staying afloat and achieving our objectives for the tremendous work we've done together in coordinating efforts to alleviate the pain caused by COVID-19 to our citizens, and in our case, to our farmers. As we wish for COVID-19 to end soon, it has forced all of us to acknowledge that our societies are adapting to a new normal. Every sector, from public administration to education, finance, manufacturing, tourism, agriculture, etc., are in transition, and we're working hard to steer this transition towards a more digital and greener future, and as you said, a more just future. As a country, we're firmly committed to the green agenda and the greener recovery by implementing actions in climate change, the circular economy, biodiversity, and in fighting air, water, and soil pollution, and by promoting rural development for securing sustainable food systems. A green recovery from this pandemic, the COVID-19, gives us an opportunity to rapidly develop this region's capacities in technology and innovation. Digitalization is an important element to safeguarding productivity and delivering services during and after the pandemic, and as well towards an economic resilience. Kosovo, the region, and countries around the world, by using digitalization, are being propelled towards achieving the UN SDGs as we've all committed to those. In this time and age, we're harnessing digitalization to our own benefits in supporting vulnerable groups, reducing inequality, sustaining livelihood, and of course, strengthen solidarity. As institutional leaders, it is our job to stay optimistic and draw unprecedented opportunities even in these bleak circumstances. Kosovo has one of the region's most advanced digital infrastructures with an internet penetration level of 98%.
Okay.
The government has envisioned digital transformation as the main driver for economic growth, employment, and innovation. We've invested in digital infrastructure for the rollout of broadband services while supporting cybersecurity, e-governance, and e-procurement systems. When it comes to digitizing agriculture, obviously my favorite topic today, it will reduce transactional costs for our farmers and make agricultural value chains more efficient, safer, and more transparent. Digitizing agriculture and rural development will transform every part of the agri-food value chain. It is a goal of our ministry, the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry and Rural Development, as well as of the government of Kosovo, that by modernizing technology and support towards farmers to mobilize farm management software, and by subsidizing devices and technologies in cooperation with the private sector, and equipping farmers with the skills required to mobilize such technologies in cooperation with educational institutions to firmly establish e-agriculture in our country. In Kosovo, applying for farming subsidies and grants in the past used to require filling out forms and submitting them in person. In collaboration with the World Bank, another important international institution in this country and in the region, we've developed a fully online grant application and management system for the first time ever this year in this country, increasing transparency and equality in processing applications, improving grant management, and reducing the risk of exposure to COVID-19 for our farmers, as they didn't have to meet at all anybody in this process face-to-face. They did the entire process online. In our farming subsidies program, we have drastically reduced the number of documents required to apply, thus significantly eliminating red tape, and I think perhaps most importantly, leveling the playing field by minimizing the potential for human error or subjectivity. The UN's role, another important institution in this country and in the region, I believe, in creating opportunities, overcoming barriers, and mitigating risks in harnessing digitalization and financing the SDGs, is of the utmost importance. However, and I must stress this, it is us, the states and the governments, who must seize these opportunities, aligning digitized finance ecosystems with these goals, progressing governance innovations to mitigate risk, and advancing digital transformation. In conclusion, this is my last sentence. We all share a common goal and vision, and that's improving our citizens' quality of life through digitization and a greener economy. Let us make this pandemic an unprecedented opportunity to bring this region forward in leaps and bounds. Thank you very much.
Besim, thank you. And if I may, that was a fantastic political statement you've just made. And I mean that in the nicest way, right? But it sounds as if like you're all right. What do you need? It's like everything's rosy in the garden of Kosovo, and that it's all good. You know, when I hear you, it's like, therefore, is there no problems here in the region of collaboration? Where's the money coming from? Do you need to do more and better with citizens? Because it really felt like, wow, you're all right, Jack.
Absolutely. There's dire needs in the agriculture and rural development and in forestry in Kosovo. But I really wanted to start this out with thanking everybody in the region, because I think we did tremendous work. And this was not easy. While everybody was shutting down borders around the world and there was no travel for any purpose, business or otherwise, in the region, all the ministers of agriculture came together, and we very quickly, utilizing the platforms and the international and regional institutions that we have put in place in the past 20 years, we utilized those, and we very quickly came up with ways to allow for agriculture products and to allow for agricultural inputs. And that's the most important part. As you remember, this pandemic in the region especially started out late February, early March, which was the time, right? One of the most important seasons for agriculture, for food production. And so we opened up the borders. While we were trying to manage travel between the countries, we managed to open up the borders for agricultural products and for agricultural inputs so that our farmers could continue working, as we had hoped at that time that the pandemic would be over very soon. Unfortunately, it didn't play out that way. But at the very least, we all came together and we did, I think, a tremendous job in opening up the borders for agricultural products. Obviously, I speak for agriculture and agricultural products. So I wanted to start, my little speech with that.
Of course.
As hard as it was, at least we did a good job in that.
So what you're saying is, like Ornella, that there is an aptitude, capacity, and a willingness politically for people at your level, at ministers, the deputy minister level, and minister level, to come together and collaborate, which is a good story. And forgive me if I was too challenging, but I wanted to kind of, listening to you, I wanted to hear what the dirt is, what the issues are below this, because it can't be that good. So it's good to hear that there is the capacity to move forward. I'll bring you back, because the time is running short, and I want to bring in foreign trade and economic relations perspective from Bosnia. Liliana, you've been really patient. Very warm welcome to you. Good to have you with us. I need you to take yourself off mute.
Mute. Here I am.
Excellent. Thank you.
Do you hear me? Okay.
Lovely to have you with us. As I said, thank you for being patient. But I wanted to kind of break this up. So
I'm always patient.
and we have to be, don't we? Particularly in this context. Good to have you with us, Liliana.
Especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Yeah, exactly in Bosnia. So I wanted to hear from you. You've been listening patiently to all the contributions that we've had so far. You are, a minister responsible for trade and economic relations. How can you, in this context, respond to the biggest issues in the region, which is about brain drain, as we know, because opportunities further west look more attractive than they do at home? But how is a minister with that responsibility, how do you take advantage of which is a terrible thing to say, the opportunity of the crisis, to create a very different economic infrastructure, both in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also the wider region?
Well, first of all, I would like to thank you and express my great pleasure for attend this very interesting conversation and very interesting meeting and conference. I would like to greet you on behalf of Ministry of Foreign Trade and Economic Relations of Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm Deputy Minister, not Minister, Deputy Minister.
That's okay.
And especially want to thank opportunity to thank the organizer of the panel, Friends of Europe, RCC, UNDP, and of course, European Commission. Bosnia and Herzegovina has repeatedly pointed out its positive attitude regarding the green agenda of Western Balkans, expecting the process of drafting the document to begin as soon as possible. Bearing in mind everything that is in green agenda and about your question, it is important about the concept of green transition and the vision of their operation from companies that make GDP, our economy, and everything to adopt the concept of green transition as soon as possible. In this way, they would become a part of a global chain. They take the responsibility of contributes to the preservation of the environment through specific business operation. And there is no timely activity of our economic operators regarding these issues. It will prevent their integration into EU market as well as the global world market. It's most important for Bosnia and Herzegovina to define the best methods to finance the transition, especially energy transition. The exchange of experience, primarily with EU member states in the field of finance and economy, will enable BNH to identify obstacles to investment and design policies and financial instruments that effectively address these obstacles. The development of legislation and regulation in BHA to support the transition with the focus on financing and construction of new production facilities will be a prerequisite for mobilizing financial resources. Everything of that will have positive effects on economic growth and job creation. But in the short term, the measures introduced to the system of energy decarbonation incur specific net costs for certain segments of society, whether in higher taxes and levies, stricter regulation, and higher prices. It is crucial to take this into account and to handle the distribution consequences of the different measures carefully, as only a fair distribution of costs can guarantee the political and social sustainability. Everything of that could be achieved by creating a new jobs, a green jobs. Green jobs means that reduce the consumption of energy, of raw materials, limit the emission of harmful gases, reduce waste and pollution, protect the restored ecosystem. Such jobs are created around the world and are very diverse depending on sector and the country which they are preferring. The shift towards a green economy is also affecting jobs. New professions will emerge and are emerging. Some will be replaced, some will be disappear completely. When we talk about green agenda in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Bosnia and Herzegovina is a country relatively rich in natural resources.
Indeed.
Water, forest, gold. All of above, all similar measures are taken by cities and municipalities in order to optimally use these resources in order to raise the quality of life of their citizens, to maximize profits and minimizing losses to the environment. The key of the solution lies in concept of sustainable development, which are we still slowly but surely moving towards. Bearing in mind the current situation with the pandemic caused by COVID-19, I emphasize the concern for the current and future state of society, both economically in every other aspect, environment, energy, social, climate, especially our readiness or unpreparedness for deal with this situation. For this reason, and being aware of the fact that we cannot solve these problems by ourselves, we support the drafting of a document and propose the development of national agendas with an action plan for each country, as well as a common regional green agenda in line with the capacities available to the country each. Such documents should be clear, feasible, with predictable funding, but also ambitious enough to meet the commitments of the Western Balkan countries.
Okay.
In addition, okay.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Go on. 60 seconds, Liliana.
Okay. In addition of a system of permanent monitoring and verification of the green agenda implementation process along with an action plan must be established with a mechanism to ensure that everything agreed upon is fully implemented. In this process, we expect the support of EU experts who should work together with our experts for Bosnia and Herzegovina and all region together to develop the national and regional green agendas for the Western Balkans. In my opinion, this is the only way that we all together can succeed in the implementation of what has been agreed upon in Western Balkan countries.
Okay, Liliana, what I'd like you to think about is that I think the issue is that therefore all that you said is absolutely right and appropriate, okay, what needs to happen. What is it that's stopping progress from happening? So what is it that you need in terms of more collaborative effort from the sister brother countries around you? What kind of support do you need from the EU? So I'd like you to kind of think about that very briefly. I'll bring you back towards the end, if I may, to answer those 2 points, because otherwise it's like I challenged Besian. It's great what you're setting out, but in reality, what needs to give and what needs to happen if we're going to move this from words to action, if you like. I want to bring in 2 or 3 contributors again from Zoom. Trina Holt, if I've got this right.
Yeah.
Hi, Trina.
Hello, everyone. I am Trina Holt. I am from UNICEF Kosovo program. I'm a child rights and also facilitator of the youth reference group that is composed by beneficiaries of UNICEF programs. It's my pleasure to be here, and I hope that first you are well during these crisis times. But I want to add just a short comment. I think that before we want to have green economies, we should create green mentality. What does that mean? In comparison with the pandemic issues, we have a lot of problems with convincing citizens to respect the measures about the COVID. Because I think that in the Western Balkans, especially in Kosovo, we deal with a not good quality education system. And this means that we don't have the education about empowering and protecting our environment, as well also having protection for our health. And by creating a green mentality, we can invest from the early childhood development of a child by having these lessons. But also, I want to highlight that young people should have their investments through internships or through different opportunities with a green component with it. Because when I discuss with my peers, we usually like the European states about their nature, about their clean perspective that they have. Because in Kosovo, for example, we have a lot of clean houses because it's the private property, while the neighborhoods are considered that are the responsibility of others. So we should create this mentality, this green mentality, in order to create and establish a good economic green, but also have this education throughout the life, especially for the young people. Thank you.
Trina, thank you so much. And, you know, the point you make is a really important one. Whilst you can invest a lot in, let's say, electricity change and infrastructure, one of the biggest infrastructure things that needs investment in the region is higher quality education from primary onwards. And if you got that right, the next 10 years might be different, and the next 50 years would be very, very different for the region. Thank you for that contribution. Dajana, or Dahana, or Dajana. I'm sorry if I've got your name wrong. Berisha.
Diana.
Diana?
It is Diana. It is Diana. It's the Albanian version of Diana. So,
Thank you. Thank you for forgiving me. Okay, Diana, over to you. Introduce yourself and your question.
Yes, thank you for the great moderation. Yes, my name is Diana Berisha, and I represent the Kosovar Civil Society Consortium for Sustainable Development from Kosovo, obviously. And it's a strong and very leading consortium of civil society organizations that has been operating in Kosovo for more than a decade against new coal investments and pro-green agenda in renewables, energy efficiency, and all of this, and also, most importantly, regional cooperation. I have to say that I was a bit surprised by the optimism of the minister, but however, it's
say it like it is, Diana. Say it like it is. What do you mean?
Yes.
Don't be a politician.
No, but it's interesting to know where is all this optimism coming from when given or keeping in mind that the current government of Kosovo barely made it to pass the law on economic recovery. And that proves that there is very little political willingness among political in Kosovo to actually cooperate in any kind of agenda, let alone green one. However, again, and without the need to criticize or anything, but just the optimism, the political optimism kind of surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to say a few things about, because we've been working for so many years now in the area, and there is a partnership that I didn't hear any one of the speakers to mention. There's already a partnership that somehow it just needs to be sort of more developed. And we're talking about Berlin 6.
Mm-hmm.
There's quite a good partnership that has been established among the countries of the Western Balkans that needs to be developed to find maybe also a better common agenda for the countries of the region, a little bit of more reforming the interconnectivity agenda, and also invest more and more in education, as you mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. What I would like to see also is a stronger voice to civil society actors of the region with regard to advocacy straight to Brussels, mm-hmm. and probably also define the role of the Energy Community Treaty Secretariat in Vienna, based in Vienna, which they have been somehow, we as a consortium have been very close to them and working, and I find their existence very crucial for also civil society, not only the government, but the civil society in the region as well. So in terms of like how I see in the Western Balkans, there's been already a drive towards green agenda, mm-hmm. particularly energy transition. An endorsement was signed in Podgorica last year, if I'm not mistaken, and that because of a lot of actions that had been taken from civil society around the region. So again, representing civil society, I just wanted to make sure that our voice was heard.
Sure,
in the
Diana, thank you for that.
Yeah.
But before you go, just briefly, or put it on the Zoom chat. So you're quite right, the points you've made, and I want people to react to what you've said. But are civil society organisations that are funded by the European Commission on the EU agenda reaching out to civil society organisations in the Balkan region? What kind of connectivity is happening? Because actually there should be a sense of sisterhood, brotherhood amongst the civil society organisations on the climate agenda. We heard earlier the really excellent point. This is from Ornella, this is without language. and it's borderless. And how do you get civil society organizations to really connect with each other across the piece? Is that happening? I'm not going to ask you to respond to it, but there's that point. And also, given the platform you're working on, how can you hatch a very different model of governance that, it's not trying to do the worst and the copy the models of governance from the EU, but to actually create a better form of governance, which is about civil society being heart of policy making, and something there's a kind of a program or a project in that should be supported, because actually if you just simply ape what the EU's done, we're not going to get very far, let's be honest. That's not to be too harsh, but actually there's an opportunity to be fresh and innovative and do the things that you think are important. So thank you very much for your point, Diana, but any points you want to put, please do so on the Zoom chat. I want to bring in our people from the live Zoom, live stream. We have a question on Twitter, and my colleague Crystal. Crystal, welcome.
Hi, Tormentor. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. We have a question from our live stream audience.
Yes, we do have a question from Twitter, and today's question is, how do smaller countries, such as the Western Balkans 6, plan on building their economy with environmental constraints that non-European economies don't have to abide by?
Okay, thank you very much for that. And that's a really important...
Sorry, can you repeat? I couldn't hear. If it is possible to repeat
I absolutely can. Crystal, can I have you back?
Yes, I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, I will put it in the Zoom chat as well, but how do smaller countries, such as the Western Balkans 6, plan on building their economy with environmental constraints that non-European economy don't have to abide by?
Okay, thank you. And also there is that issue, which is something that came up yesterday, but also is an agenda here, is that there are forces at play in the region from other parties, governments, interests further east. We know China is investing heavily in the area, and we know that some of the investment that happens from China can skew a national economy and also not be in the same vein as what EU funding might do. And we've seen how Montenegro, for example, and others have had almost so much of loan funding that it's tipped their GDP 70% over in debt just from a loan from another country further east. And those are the powers that are there, and we know it's going on. That's why the EU really does need to form a firmer grip about how it supports the Balkans in a meaningful, sustainable, ethical manner. I'm going to come to all of our political speakers now to kind of end off and have an opportunity to comment on some of the points, because this has been really rich and effective, just like yesterday. And again, with a lot of passion, heat, but clarity also about what needs to happen. But before I do, so I will come to all of our politicians and then end with Charlotte. So I'm putting you all on notice as we have to conclude in about 6 or 7 minutes. I may have to go on a bit longer if you don't mind. I want to go to Fioralba, one of our European young leaders. Good afternoon, well, welcome. Hello.
Hello. Glad to be here back. Can you hear me?
Indeed. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you. No, I just had a small comment, like reading into chat, these concerns about inequality, which I think were very much widened during the pandemic. We have seen, for example, a recent number of domestic violence in Albania, but I know that it's not an isolated issue. And an initiative we took in the Ministry of Justice was to increase the legal aid by using technology. And we created a specific online platform, which vulnerable people, women who were being abused could use it and take legal advice online for free. And I know that there is a big debate about how technology is widening the gap of inequality. But I think that we need to come together and explore how we can use technology to close the gap.
Indeed.
Because I was surprised when I got the statistics and we had like 5,000 cases registered of people calling or wanted to take an advice by a lawyer online, because most of people now have
smartphones.
Exactly. I was going to say, this is must available on a smartphone for women who can, when they're subject to domestic violence, it's very hard to find the private space to be able to be away from the man, to be able to do, and it's mostly men who, commit it, to actually access help. And this seems like an excellent solution. So you're saying over 5,000 people?
Yes. I mean, I checked the last statistics in the ministry, and there were like 5,000 people who took or contacted the platform and took the advice. And during the pandemic, in these 9 months, we also coupled it with opening legal clinic physically in different parts of the country.
Excellent.
And also, doing some sensibilization and advertising of the platform. And I think that coupling with traditional forms of legal aid, it helped us. But the number of cases show that we can easily approach even the vulnerable by using technology.
Indeed.
And
Indeed.
this is something I was myself surprised, because I had the other conviction that technology is really widening the gap. But sometimes you can explore and find out that
Absolutely. I totally, Fioralba, I totally agree with you. It's yesterday we were saying, and technology absolutely has the power for good and can be a power for good, but it's only because without regulation and without us thinking through long-term enough, we end up catching up on the kind of ethics and morality of it. And actually, here's an example where, thousands of women will find that sense of comfort as long as there's follow-up. And I would be interested to know whether that application was shared across the region. You don't have to answer now, but wouldn't it be great if that was something that was an innovation that was created, but actually was available to the Balkan regions more widely? Because domestic violence, again, is borderless, we know, and it's something that occurs across the region, but across the EU. I need to go directly to Bessie, and Bessie, if I may, because I know you need to go also because you've got other important things to do, as all ministers do. So thank you for being with us and staying with us. Here's your 60-second, 180-second pitch in response to some of the issues you've heard before you go.
Absolutely agree with everybody. There are challenges in this country, in the region, but they're also in the entire world, not just because of COVID, but also because of COVID. But we've had challenges in economic development, in building just and green economies before COVID, and we'll continue to have those. And I was asked why the optimism, and I fully agree. It took us a few months to pass the law on economic recovery, but we did pass it. And therefore, my optimism. And I think there's always hope. And it is our job, and I said that in my opening remarks, it is our job, the leaders, in whatever level, in whatever capacity. I think leaders must be optimistic. We must instill hope and optimism in everybody that there is light at the end of the tunnel. And that's where my optimism comes from. Yes, we have challenges. Yes, it's not always easy, and it's sometimes extremely hard to pass these laws, and even in implementing these laws and these programs. But at the end of the day, we do pass them, we do implement them, and that's why there's hope, and that's why I'm always optimistic.
Good for you, and hope that, in terms of responding to some of the issues raised by young people, the youth voices here, is about a very different citizen politic that takes place in Albania. And I do hope that we learn the lessons of the poor example of this happening in the EU and elsewhere in the world, that actually the Balkans could be a pathfinder in a different kind of model of democracy and revitalizing a bottom-up approach. Thank you for being with us. And I know, because I'm running so behind, and I do apologize for that, and I crave your indulgence to stick with me for another 5 minutes, but I know some of our contributors need to go. So I'm going to have to go to Charlotte. Charlotte, I was going to ask you to come in last, but I know that you need to go because you've got a whole big bag of issues to respond to, given the kind of points that were made. Can I just open up to you before you go about the issue around building financial capability and, brain power locally, the kind of infrastructure investment in education, a very different approach to, citizen engagement, etc. and so forth. Back to you, Charlotte.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to just touch on two of the things. One of the things you mentioned, and one other thing you mentioned earlier, which is rule of law. And rule of law is super important because we are working with the governments on policies. These are then embodied in regulations and legislation. If people can get around them by knowing somebody, by paying a bribe, whatever, if there isn't proper enforcement, then investors won't come and people will leave, because it's all about the quality of life. And that takes me to quality of life. And I think that is the key thing on the brain drain. People leave for better lives and better opportunities. So the governments can do best for their citizens by offering better education, better healthcare, investing, to help also make sure that skills match what the jobs, what jobs there are. So talking to the private sector to understand what jobs can be filled. And I would say that, you know, we're very happy to help with some of these things. We aren't the bank for healthcare. That's the Council of Europe Development Bank.
Yeah.
But we do this work in the private sector. I'm talking about public health.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, it's been great to be part of this event with all of these inspiring young people. And I hope that through our work in the private sector and in the public sector, we can support some of these endeavors. So thank you very much.
Charlotte, thank you. Thank you for being with us and staying the course of this. But, you know, there's some interesting ideas. You know, when you think about what Jana said about financial capability, building a better type of infrastructure and a project around thinking about how do you create different financial instruments, it's worthy of a second conversation amongst the others. And we look forward to working with you next year. And there's some of the partners here to let's build a different kind of conversation about investment and opportunity, which is about homegrown talent and homegrown development rather than trying to follow the lead of others. Thank you very much, Charlotte, for being with us. Thank you, bye. I want to go to Liliana before I conclude with Ornella. Liliana, if I can ask you to say a few words before we close off, in response to what you've heard so far.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, I agree with everybody that everyone said, but I also agreed with you that in Bosnia and Herzegovina and in region, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, things are getting a little bit slower than they should be. But, you know, we are, and that's our country. We have that kind of constitution and everything else. Entities, but we are committed to green agenda, to Western Balkans, and I think that Bosnia and Herzegovina will do everything to achieve the maximum of implementation of this document and action plan. COVID-19 and pandemic is crisis, but crisis can be a chance. So we have to take opportunities from the chance and make the best of it for all of us in Western Balkan and in European Union and in whole world.
Thank you, Lina. And one of the things that I'm thinking of, and Ornella, you might want, I'm going to give you the last word here, is that wouldn't it be interesting to have a session next year which brings deputy ministers and ministers from different portfolios in a conversation about change in and of itself for the region, which looks at the opportunities for hatching a different model, but including young people and civil society. So that's something that I'm going to pitch to all of you, that we should do differently perhaps, which brings the political community, civil society community and young people into a brave conversation about how we do it for ourselves. Over to you, Ornella.
So as I said, I am coming from academia, and I will say something that I am saying every year to my students. So I will share with you the Albanian case of 30 last years of transition of democracy. We had almost 3 big protests in our country coming from the citizens, from the NGOs. And 2 of them, they was about environmental issues. And the last one, it was from the universities. So governments, they are only for 4 years. Let's say for 8 years. If we are doing something for environment, we will wait at least 20 years for having the result. So the government, they are not interested for investing so much at the environmental issues, for sure. But all the citizens, the universities, the NGOs should be optimistic for obliging the governments to realize their investments for the environmental issues, because the environment is for all of us. And at least environment has no opposite. So if we as ministry, we are planting trees, who will tell us why you are planting trees in your country? So, but in the same time, it's the most cross-cutting sector. We have to include the management, the investments, the politics, the standards, the monitoring, the education, even. So in this case, I think that if the environment is pure technical issue, because it's pure technical issue, we have to engage more the universities. And I think that the best expertise that we can find in our countries, it is the university, the expertise. And in this state, if we want to do the sustainability of our countries in environmental issues, we can bring together the economic, social, and environmental policies together with the public consultation, obligatory public consultation for every decision in our ministry, even for the environmental impact assessment. In this way, we can find the only way how to manage our environment for better standards life.
Ornella, thank you. A powerful statement, because what you're in effect saying is that, you know, governments, especially those that have been long-standing in the region, may not change. The leadership, especially the male leadership, isn't going to change or listen. Take an alternative route and be empowered and work through your higher, you know, your university sector and your community and civil society sector to seed change, which is a very powerful statement that builds on a number of the statements made today by Diana, young people, etc. And it's a recurrent theme, and it's about enough already. How do we get some of our partners, investors in the region to actually listen to what you've just said and actually create a very different kind of dialogue and framing for economic, social and technological change, which is both green and sustainable. Thanks to all of you. This has been, again, a really very, very good conversation. I want to thank all our contributors for being frank, responding to the challenges that I've posed them, but also mostly to you for being with us. I have run over time again, as I did yesterday, but you'll have a different moderator tomorrow, so hopefully he'll be more efficient than I will in terms of keeping to time. I've enjoyed this. It's been great. I hope you found it stimulating and thoughtful, and continue to engage with us. There are a number of themes emerging, I think, in this last two, yesterday and today, which I think we will build on. And we are committed to making sure, as Friends of Europe, working with the partners and yourselves, to actually perhaps craft a different kind of agenda for next year based on these conversations. If you have ideas, thoughts, and you want to work with us, get in touch, email us, and help us craft an agenda for the Balkan Summit next year, which is perhaps different and totally shot through with some of the discussions and ideas you've come up with today. Thank you all very much. It's same time, same place tomorrow afternoon. Don't forget, here we are. It's all about technology. And we look forward to welcoming you there for that third and final day of our Balkan Summit. That's it from me. And thank you all very much. Take care, be safe, and mind your distance. And look forward to welcoming you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.